and welcome to Big League Dream, the podcast, a show about baseball, dreams, and family. I'm John Gonzalez, the dad, and if this is your first time or you're a regular listener to Big League Dream, the podcast, you might know the format by now. It is a dad with his three sons talking about the game they love so much. Sometimes we have two of the three on with us. Occasionally, one of the three will show up. Sometimes it's just me. No, that's not true. It's never just me. But every once in a while, we also get all three of the boys. So today is one of those rare days, which I'm glad because today is a really special show. But before we get into that special guest, a milestone really for Big League Dream, the podcast. We're in season 4 right now, which is crazy to believe. But a year ago, 3 years ago to be exact, something special happened. We'll talk about that in a minute. Let's introduce all three of the sons on the podcast. We're going to go in reverse order. We'll start with son number 3, Zane Gonzalez, the Red Sox fan. Zane, how you doing today?
What's up? What's up? It's good to be back on. I haven't been on in a while.
Yeah, we missed you. I think the last time you were on with us when it was like preseason or early season down in Florida or down south somewhere, right?
Yep, we were down in West Virginia eating breakfast.
With the whole team at the hotel and trying to do the show. That was awesome. A lot of fun. I'm glad I'm not glad. I wish your season was still going on, but there's always good and bad with each season, right? You learn a lot.
Yep. Got to get better for next year.
Got to get better for next year. And then son number 2 is Ty Gonzalez. He's the Mets fan. Ty, how you doing?
I'm doing great today. Reverse order doesn't mean anything for me. I'm the middle child, so I'm still in the same spot, but I'm doing great, and I'm super pumped for today's guest. This is going to be a great one.
Yeah, your Mets have a connection to today's guest.
Yep.
We'll talk about that in a second. Son number 1 in birth order, the Mariners fan. How you doing? You're down in North Carolina today.
The first place Mariners. Yes. Doing great. Yeah, excited to have our first ever guest on the Big League Dreaming podcast return for his second appearance on the pod. So yeah, excited.
I know. I when you tweeted that out, I was like, what? That can't be, right? And I'm glad that you were able to connect with them. I mean, now that he's a big star and celebrity now, I was kind of afraid he wouldn't have time for us. But because he's been in the news everywhere. In fact, I was driving from Mount Pleasant back to Grand Rapids, and I turned on, the MLB network on my Sirius radio there, and like the whole pregame was about our guest. I mean, they wouldn't stop talking about this guest, and I'm like, wow, when's the last time a broadcaster became the center of attention of a Major League Baseball game, Zach? That's pretty cool.
It's super cool. When I was working the Charlotte Knights game just the other day, the Knights broadcasters were talking about our guest. So, during our game, and it's completely separate game. So yeah, very special. Pretty cool.
I got a lot of questions for our guest because I read the press release that went out before his big thing happened. And he was like, he had won the Academy Awards. He was thanking everyone, his grandma, his dog. I mean, it was pretty funny. You know what? Let's just introduce him. Zach, why don't you introduce our guest, our return guest?
Absolutely. Very excited to welcome on our friend of the podcast, Scott Kornberg, who is the AAA broadcaster for the Jacksonville Jumbo Shrimp, AAA affiliate for the Miami Marlins. Scott, I appreciate you jumping on. We're really excited to talk to you.
You guys know I would always give time to you guys. I mean, I love you guys. So thank you for having me on. And yeah, I had no idea that they were talking about me in any of those places. So Zach, tell Mike and Matt that I appreciate that. And I'm looking forward to seeing you guys when we play in Charlotte, first off, in a couple weeks.
Absolutely. I'll definitely mention them. And Dad, the reason that they're talking about him, right, is because this past Saturday, May 18th, which was pretty wild. Ty, you pointed this out to me, that May 18th was the day that we interviewed Scott in 2021. And then May 18, 2024, Scott was, blessed to be able to call a regular season game for the Marlins up in the broadcast booth against the Mets, a day game. Scott, I mean, you probably can't even put it into words, but like congratulations, first of all, but I guess how special was that whole day?
First off, I had no idea that I talked to you guys May 18th, 2021. So when you texted me that, I thought that was so cool. The day itself, it is difficult. Like, I mean, a funny story. Actually, I'll get to that later. It was incredible. Like, first off, to be there, to be in the major leagues, which is a dream come true. Wow. And then for Kyle Seeloff, who's the Marlins normal radio broadcaster, and Steven Strom to give me the innings that I got. I got 5 innings and a 9 inning game. And then for the game to go into the 10th, and we're going to commercial to go into the 10th inning, and he's like, "Oh yeah, by the way, 10th's yours." And then for the Marlins to win in a walk-off, I mean, if the Marlins would have lost 25-0, I would have been still in heaven. But the fact that all those things happened and my family was there, my kids, my wife, my parents have flown down from New Jersey, my uncle and cousin have flown out from Dallas. I mean, it was so perfect. In the 7th or 8th inning or so, I thought to myself, man, I just wish this game would go a little bit longer. And the baseball gods listened. It's truly incredible.
God, I loved how in the pregame, as you guys were sorting out, like they were getting to know you a little bit, and I was blessed to be able to listen to that game, and I just was like, holy cow, this is real. We talk to players sometimes who dream of that day of making it to the show, right? But here you are, broadcaster, and you had a little cup of coffee in spring training. You got a little taste of it, right? And you probably wondered, is this ever going to happen? And you finally get that moment, like Zach was saying, like not only, I mean, the whole experience must have been surreal for you, but in that pregame, they're like, "Oh, what innings do you want to, what innings should we give them? Let's give them the first inning." I'm thinking, oh my gosh, that's like being the leadoff batter.
It is. And a lot of people ask me if I was nervous. And this will sound weird, but I woke up and I felt like it was my wedding day. And you're supposed to be nervous for your wedding, but I was not nervous at all. Like, I just remember that day, and I got married in 2019. I just felt like it was perfect, right? Like I was marrying my best friend, and it was going to be an amazing day. And I woke up very early, of course, because I have 2 very young kids. So they got up at like 6:16. And it didn't matter. Like I felt really good. And I think part of it was because of those spring training games you talked about. Maybe if I had never worked for the Marlins, I had never worked with Kyle or Steven, there's a little bit of foreign, stuff there. But I worked with those guys a bunch, and they're super easy to work with. And they made me feel so comfortable. I mean, the things that they did in advance of the game to, get my family tickets and batting practice passes, and the fact that for me, most of the Marlins played in Jacksonville at some point, so I know them personally. So the stories I told in the air, if people who are Jacksonville fans were listening to play, I heard that one already. But the opponent, the Mets, I know for you, John, like it was not a great day, and they have a lot of questions now. But I grew up a Mets fan, and so I still read about the Mets a ton. So it wasn't like we were playing a team that, like, we don't play the Syracuse Mets here in the International League outside of one series in 2022. But I know what's going on with the Mets. I know the players. My dad is a huge fan. My brothers are huge fans of the Mets. So even though I work for a Marlins affiliate and I know all their guys, I still, in a weird way, like, I keep in touch and I follow the Mets. So it wasn't like a team that I didn't know. And I think all those factors, it made me feel pretty comfortable, or more so than I maybe would have been, if it was Marlins versus Rockies, where we don't have any Rockies affiliates in our system or anything like that. So all those things really helped quite a bit.
All right, did you get a chance to listen to the game at all? Because the Marlins or the Mets got out to a hot start there, and I thought, wow, they're going to ruin Scott's debut.
Yeah, I definitely saw the highlights afterwards, and that Scott, being a Mets fan, that's classic Mets baseball right there. Take a huge lead and tank it at the end. I bet you were just loving that, though. I mean, how perfect is that? Mets fan, but you're working for the Marlins. I mean, you can't make it up. It's the perfect story. And like we mentioned earlier in the podcast, exactly 3 years after we interviewed you, you had your debut. I mean, it was almost like it was set up for you,
It was crazy. I mean, so Gary Cohen was there, obviously calling the game on SNY. I never met him before, and he came. I met him before the game obviously told him how much of an influence he was on my career. And then after that game, he came into the Marlins radio booth to be like, wow, what a first game for you. And he didn't have to do that. He could have just left. And I thought that was super cool. It was funny, we were joking in the Marlins radio booth down 7-2, like this game is probably over. Even in the ninth, the Mets had scored twice in the top of the ninth. It's 9-5, and you're like, Edwin Diaz is coming in, and I know he's been really shaky recently, but he's still Edwin Diaz, and the Marlins don't have a great offense. So, I think that added to it was one of those amazing baseball games where, and I think this is what makes baseball great, nobody could have guessed what was going to happen. And then, we do the whole post-game show, and Gary came in and all that, and like it's like a fairy tale for me. And I texted my wife. This was the funny story I was going to mention earlier. And I said, this day has been absolutely incredible. And I'll preface this by saying my son's name is Sam. He's 4 years old. And they left the game, I believe, in the 8th or 9th inning, because for my kids, they go to bed normally at 7 o'clock. So they were exhausted. So they were apparently having a difficult time late. So they left and listened to the end of the game. And anyway, so I texted her, this day has been absolutely incredible. And she responded and she said, Sam just threw up all over the hotel elevator. And I said, all right, this day has been slightly less incredible, but still pretty darn good. But yeah, I mean, it was everything you could have written up for the script, the game, the Mets, my family there, just the way the Marlins treated me, the camaraderie I feel with their broadcasters already. I mean, I still, a couple days later, I'm just like, it feels like I'm floating still. What an amazing day.
Yeah. I definitely can relate to that, just that feeling of floating. So I'm going to make a connection here that might seem a little like a made up here, but I'm going to bring Zane in next. Zane, I will tell you this. When I listened to the game and listening to Scott call that first inning, I said to your mom, my wife, Pam, I just said, he doesn't sound nervous at all. You could tell that you had familiarity with everyone in the booth. You were so comfortable. But Zane, as a baseball player and a baseball coach yourself, we talk about preparation. And when the moment comes, right, that you're ready to compete, right? You're ready. When you're talking to your guys, if they don't put the practice in, they're not ready to compete. They're going to have issues, right? So I'm really curious about your take on Scott's performance and about being prepared, Zane.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's very similar to what all the players go through, right? Like, he's working his way up through the minors to get to that next level. And like, when you get to that next level, you don't change everything you do. Like, you're there for a reason, because obviously you can do it, and you've prepared and put the time in, and people believe in you and trust that you're going to be able to do a really good job, and people are going to want to see you do what you do. And now's not the time to start overthinking stuff. You just keep doing what you do. You don't change anything. I think that's probably something that people don't really consider about. We talk about big league dreaming, and that's why we try and bring on so many different, sides of baseball on here, is because there's so many different areas that people are trying to get to the big leagues. Like, there's radio announcers, PA announcers, there's official scorers that are trying to get to the big leagues. Like, there's all different sides of the game that are people trying to get there. And when they get there, it's just another day. It's just a little more fun.
It's just a little more fun, especially when your team wins. Zane, do you have any questions for Scott at all? Because were you on that first podcast with him?
No, that probably would have been May 18th, 21. We were probably just wrapping up our season. Yeah, so we were probably in the midst of season for us. So I wasn't on that first one, but I mean, probably the classic question you always get of, actually, I'm not going to ask a classic question because that's just boring. I'm going to ask, like, what are some other areas that you've seen people take that step to the big leagues and you've just been like, that's awesome, whether it be a groundskeeper get called up or something? Like, what other areas of baseball that people don't really realize take that next step into the big leagues that you've seen that have been pretty cool for you to see?
All of them. It never gets old seeing somebody make the major leagues. That's everybody's goal, as you guys said, at this level. And there's a lot of stuff that you have to deal with in the minor leagues. The pay is not always good, and you work long hours. You're doing so many different things. So groundskeepers, sales guys. I mean, obviously my fellow broadcasters, players, coaches, it never gets old because that is the ultimate dream. And you see people's reactions when they do it, and you know the hard work that goes into it to get through this. All of them, I know it's a cop out answer, but like when you see someone so thrilled, and I know I felt like this when I got that call, like I could finally, oh wow, this is what it feels like. Yeah, you know, like I've been telling, like some of our players have been asking about it, and even friends who have not gotten there who are broadcasters, and I just like I sincerely hope that they get a chance to do it because you're not guaranteed, right? The odds for anybody in any of these positions are so long, players included in that. And then to experience, even if it's for one day, if I never make it back, obviously I want to go back, right? But if I got to experience that and it made all those difficult times that I dealt with, everything that I've dealt with in the minors, and I know anyone who's made that jump feels the same way, it made it all worth it in just one day. Like it was incredible. So to see anyone get that chance, it doesn't get old. Our strength coach a few years back in Jacksonville is the Marlins strength coach now. So I got to see him. And I remember when he got that call, actually like a couple weeks before our season started this year. And it's like, you know, how thrilled he was and to be able to talk to him about that. That's what it's all about. Like all these people, no matter what role it is, they're realizing their dream. You know, you're rooting for everybody to do it, but you know how difficult it is. And I think that's what makes it special is that most people, unfortunately, they don't. And that's really difficult at the same time.
Great question, Zane. Zach, I think what Scott's telling us is on his call up to the majors, he got the major league minimum for broadcasters.
Oh yeah.
I mean, you know, it was the minimum, that's for sure. But I'm grateful for even a day or for anything, right? So, yeah, it's awesome in every way. And the way the Marlins did it was really cool. Kyle Seeloff, he gives my dad tickets to Mets games when the Marlins play there. And so he called me and he said, you know, like I have, does your dad need tickets when the Mets play the Marlins on May 18th? And I was like, yeah, you know, if you guys could swing it, that would be great. And he said, well, even here in Miami, like I have it in my notes that, you know, he's going to need tickets for Marlins Mets here in Miami. And I'm like, no, he doesn't go to Miami. Like he's been there in the past, but he doesn't go there for work. Like there's no way. And he said, well, you know, just triple check with him because I think he's going to want tickets when you make your major league debut with me on May 18th. And like, that was so cool, right? Like when people do it in a fun way like that. One of our relievers just said, you know, he got a call like 11:30 midnight and our manager asked him, are you sleeping? And he said, yeah. And our manager said, well, you better wake up because you need to get on the flight to go to Oakland. Like there's all these fun ways that people do it. So that is.
Well,
it's there.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yeah. There's always fun ways to do it.
There's always fun ways to do it. That's right. So the creativity is fantastic. And my apologies, I'm on the hotel internet here in Georgia.
Well, Scott, the last time you were on our podcast, you were talking about that kinship that kind of broadcasters have with players and that they're trying to move up level by level to, you know, try to make it to the major leagues. And you said word for word, if I could just broadcast one game for one day at the major league level, that would be my dream. And I showed that clip to my wife and she was like, so like, what's he going to do now? Does he just retire? How does this work? I mean, he's done. He accomplished his dream. Like, what's going on? I thought you'd think that's pretty funny. But I did want to ask you, Scott, about just being around like the major league players. I mean, a lot of those guys, like you said, came through Jacksonville and were in AAA with you. You've interviewed them, things like that. I mean, the starting pitcher, Braxton Garrett, like you've talked to him so many times, and like, I mean, you don't have to go into his whole story of the ups and downs he went through with his minor league career and things like that. But was there any like specific moment like during BP where like a Marlins player looked at you and was like, Scott, what are you doing here? Like, what's going on?
Yeah, I think some of them knew, I think, because they follow the Jumbo Shrimp or whatever, or me on social media. But some of them did not. And they're like, major league debut. And like, that was really cool. So yeah, a lot of those guys, it is really remarkable how many, like, I don't say everybody, but a lot of them came through here, and that was really cool to have seen them on their rise. And almost all of them, you're like, what a really nice person, and they're realizing, as we talked about a few minutes ago, they're realizing their dream. That's fantastic. So if they get to see them there and not in Jacksonville, I don't want to see them in Jacksonville. I want to see them in Miami. That was really cool.
Scott, I have a trivia question for the boys, which you know the answer to this trivia question. But before I ask the trivia question, give us just a brief overview of your career, like where you went. Just real quick recap it, because we did address that quite a bit on the first podcast. But you know, you're originally from Brooklyn, right?
My dad was born in Brooklyn. My mom was from Niagara Falls, but I was born in Long Island, New York, and really grew up in New Jersey. Went to the University of Maryland, majored in broadcast journalism, did a wide variety of things for student radio. And then from there, to be very brief, I've worked for the High Point Thomasville High Toms, Colgate University, Quad Cities River Bandits, Western Illinois University, Winston-Salem Dash, Myrtle Beach Pelicans, and now the Jumbo Shrimp.
Yeah, Jumbo Shrimp all the way. Jumbo Shrimp for life. I just love that name. All right, trivia question time. All right, here we go. Zach, Ty, and Zane, and the reason I'm asking this is because this is going to show you the depth of what it takes to be a broadcaster, right? I mean, you have to have a passion for this game. So what do Henry Aaron, Tom Seaver, Randy Johnson, and Clayton Kershaw have in common?
Vin Scully.
Oh, that's not bad. Not bad, Zane.
It's always Vin Scully.
Oh,
I don't know.
That's a good one.
They're all from the same county.
Close.
That's crazy.
Scott, tell them the connection.
They all played in Jacksonville at some point. So 11 different Hall of Famers played in Jacksonville. Those are 4 of the best. It's hard to beat that quartet.
But you
That's
did
good
the
research.
research for this. Well, but you did the research though, right?
So during COVID, there was like no records when I got this job in Jacksonville, which really surprised me. So during COVID, and this is so nerdy, but I had time. There's no baseball. So I went back through every single minor league season in Jacksonville history, which dates back to 1904. And I compiled a list of all the alumni who would play in the major leagues. We didn't have that. And we didn't know that some of these guys played here. And now we know, like, that's amazing that 11 players in the Hall of Fame, and like most of the 11, not all, but most are like, everybody knows those names. Like there are some like Rube Marquardt. You have to be a really in-depth guy to know who that is, or Al Lopez, like a super big baseball fan. But there's a lot of guys who are like whoa, like Henry Aaron has a chance to be the best player of all time. There's an argument there. Tom Seaver is an argument to be the greatest pitcher of all time. So does Randy Johnson. They played here. And there's actually 2 Hall of Famers on the same team. 1987 Jacksonville Expos had Randy Johnson and Larry Walker. Like that's super cool. And I know in minor league baseball you market for the promotions and the fireworks and the food, but there is a segment of the populace that cares about that stuff besides just me. And I think it was a worthwhile project. We also got like records. We didn't have any records for like who had the best batting average, who had the most home runs in the season. So I did that from 1962 to present. So AA and AAA era here, because again, I thought that would be worthwhile. And, I don't know. I was surprised, but hopefully it's been a cool project for people.
Well, that stuff kind of matters because, we do all of our stuff over at the minor league team here in South Bend at the South Bend Cubs, and they got stuff all over the place of here's all the people that have been in the MLB and spent time in South Bend. Like I wouldn't have known that Terry Francona managed in South Bend at one point if I didn't walk past that big poster that's in their indoor facility.
Exactly. And I think it matters on some level, right? Like there are probably some fans who don't care who Terry Francona is, but in particular, I mean, for Cubs fans, they are amazing fans. And I could speak to that having worked in the organization in Myrtle Beach. Like people were like, whoa, like I didn't know he played there. And I think it legitimizes the minor league baseball a little bit. Like, wait a minute, Randy Johnson played in Jacksonville, Clayton Kershaw pitched in Jacksonville, Giancarlo Stanton, played in Jacksonville. Like all these things, it makes it like some people don't think it's professional baseball. It is. It's a really high level of baseball, South Bend or AAA, whatever it is. I think it in the minds of people, it makes it that like, wow, this is a really neat thing to be at this game.
I think you missed like the best pitcher of all time, Nolan Ryan.
Right. Another one. He was back-to-back years with Seaver and Nolan Ryan, and Jerry Koosman at that time came through Jacks. The Mets, the 69 Mets, like most of those guys came through Jacksonville and they won the World Series. Like that's really freaking cool. The uniforms that they had at that time are awesome. They're like blue pinstripes, the sun scripted in blue with orange trim, so it kind of looks like the Mets. From what I've heard, I would love to go back to these uniforms, but from what I've heard, the Marlins aren't keen on looking like the Mets, or their minor league looking like the Mets, so it hasn't happened. But there were some great teams in Jacksonville.
Love the history. Hey Ty, I would imagine that that's probably cool for you too, to hear not only the history of it, but to find someone with such passion, right? That he's got some time to kill. I'm just going to do some research.
Yeah, that's really cool. It's also crazy that when you got there wasn't anything like that. So I bet that was a fun project to work on over that time with no baseball. It's probably like really, really fun. Just I'm guessing you got in like a good groove and just couldn't stop doing it.
Yeah, I was just like on Baseball Reference all day, and like had an Excel doc, so I'd find somebody, and then I have an Excel doc with all this information, kind of like organized it that way. But for me, like the best part of this job is baseball. I do other things here, and every job you have things you don't love, right? Almost all of this job I do really enjoy, but if I get to do baseball stuff, that's why I got in this. Like I do sales and I enjoy it for the most part, and I do some PR stuff and I enjoy it for the most part, but to do like baseball research and obviously the broadcasting, that's why I got into this. So like, okay, I couldn't broadcast baseball in 2020, but like I was still reading about baseball every day and looking things up and writing about it. I really like that part of it. Just trying to make the best of a not great situation.
I have a quick question for you. Did you score the game, or do you score games?
I do. I can actually show you my book if you want. I do everything color coded, but I have like a book
autograph it for us, like a plexiglass thing,
Here, I have it back here. I'll give you a moment.
I mentioned Scott's colored pens last time he was on the pod, but I saw on his social media post they actually gave him the lineup card from that game. That was super cool.
That was really cool of them. I mean, again, like Otto Lopez hit a walk-off hit. I didn't do anything, but they gave me the lineup card. And that's a big honor in baseball. So that my wife apparently is making plans. I was like, I have to get a frame for it, and she said, "Don't do anything. I am getting something for you." So I think she's gonna frame it with like a bunch of pictures because she asked me what pictures I like. But yeah, I color code everything. I don't know how much of this people could see. But this is from Mets Marlins on Saturday, and like obviously it's team color coded in a lot of spots. Like up here, teal for the Marlins and blue for the Mets, and little nuggets. But I do because you're calling the games. You don't want to take your eyes off the game too much. So if someone gets a strikeout or someone gets a hit, it's easy if I just look for color to know how many strikeouts there have been in the game, or how many hits there have been in the game, or how many RBIs somebody has. Like it helps me a little bit. I didn't used to do this. And I saw when I was probably my first or second year in the minor leagues, I saw Dave Sims, the Mariners broadcaster, who I think is great. He posted his scorebook and it was all color coded. And I was like, it's a really good idea. Let me do that. And so I think it's kind of the colors I use. There is a reason behind it. So like I do yellow for hits because they're highlights, and green for RBIs because they get you money, and orange for errors because the ball gets dirty, purple for hit by pitches because obviously you get a bruise, and I think Braxton hit a bunch of guys in this one. Pink for strikeouts because they can be really pretty. So I have like a whole system behind it. A red for wild pitches and pass balls because they leave you red with rage. So I try to like make it funny so it somehow made sense in my brain. But I've been doing this now for like 10 years and it's been awesome. I think color is so much easier to know what you're looking for.
So you mean that you don't have someone feeding you the stats as you're going? There's,
No, not in the minor leagues. You do not. You're your own person. So I've got like a big document on my computer with every player, like the Charlotte Knights, for example, or the Gwinnett Stripers who are playing this week. So if whoever's batting or who's ever pitching, I go on Microsoft Outlook and I go to the Gwinnett Stripers book that I've got, and then to whatever player it is, and like that way I don't have to remember everything, and then stats wise, I just write a lot of it in here so that I could just refer to it. There's some things that stick. I don't have that bad of a memory, I'd like to think, but that helps. And then, obviously our players are in there as well. So yeah, it's like there's little things you refer to that you've got up on your computer. Zach knows this really well. There's a stats portal that I have on my computer that, throughout the game it updates and it tells you what was the exit velocity of that hit, or what, how hard was that pitch and where was it thrown, and what kind of spin rate did it have? And most of these things you don't use, but it's there just in case. So you're just trying to make it as easy as possible and refer to things as quickly as possible, because you never know when you might need it. And all this research that I do, I probably use like 5% of it, but it's there in case I need it.
Scott, go ahead, Di.
Oh, I was gonna say, Zach was sending me some clips from the first episode you guys did, and I thought one that was really cool. You were saying growing up, like playing wiffle ball or baseball in the back, you would kind of like imitate and say like, oh, Mike Piazza's up, or Edgardo Alfonso, and I thought it was really cool. And you mentioned earlier in this episode Gary, and you got the chance to meet him real quickly. What was that moment like? Are there any other broadcasters that are big influence, or is Gary the guy? Because I'm a big Gary fan as well. What was that moment like, just seeing him and thinking back to, man, like I used to just like listen to this guy. Now, like how wild was that? Was their booth next to you guys?
Yeah, there's glass on the side. So their booth was right next to us. So I look over throughout the game. It's Gary Cohen and Keith Hernandez. It was so wild. And I've emailed with him in the past. So, but I never met him face to face. And so I told him I'd be making my major league debut, and he was very excited. And so I went in there before the game. It was just, I don't know where Keith was, but he was somewhere else. But it actually worked out almost better because, for Gary, he is such a huge part of why I do this. My earliest sports memories are Vinny Testaverde tearing his Achilles after the Jets had this, and I'm a Jets fan, had this depressing loss in the AFC Championship game the year before, when the Super Bowl was going to be on my birthday. So I was so excited, and they were up at halftime, and John Elway led the Broncos back, and then you're really excited for the next season, and he tore his Achilles the first game, and they never were able to make it back there until 10 or so years later. And the other sports memory that I have was I did something to my sister, I don't know what it was, that I got in trouble for, and my parents banished me to my room, and I really wanted to watch the Mets Diamondbacks ALDS game, and so I couldn't watch it because I was in trouble. So I had one of those those clocks that had the radio on it. So I turned on the Mets game, and he was calling it, and Todd Pratt hit a walk-off home run. And I remember going crazy and then getting in more trouble because I also apparently was not supposed to be listening to the Mets game. But I told him these things, and I was like, you are such a big part of, even though I'm only just meeting you, you were a huge reason that I'm here, because I think he's the best baseball broadcaster there is. But it's one of those core things that there's things I take from him kind of naturally because I've listened to him for, almost my whole life probably. And that was really cool. And so, we talked for a little while, and he said just be you. That's how you got here. And other people had said that too, but it was really cool hearing it from him. And then to have him come after the game, I didn't expect that. He tapped me on the shoulder. I was on the post game show. And I was like, huh? Who is this? And it was him. And I had to mute myself. And he, he said, what a first game for you. That's incredible. I hope you enjoyed it. Like all these things. He didn't have to do that. He could have just left. I think it speaks to why he's so good at this. He gets such great information. His preparation is top notch, and it's the relationship part of it. He's an incredible broadcaster. Other people that come to mind that have influenced me, Ian Eagle. I think he's amazing at what he does. Also an amazing guy. Howie Rose, obviously, he wasn't in Miami. He doesn't take every trip anymore. Those three, probably, Vin Scully, but that came later. My grandparents listened to Vin Scully as Brooklyn Dodgers fans, but there was no way in the 90s to listen to the Dodgers. But then when we got MLB Network, if you will allow me to tell a short story, I think I was in either high school or college. I'd heard about Vin Scully for a long time, but I'd never listened to him. So I was like, okay, well, there's nothing on TV. Like I'll put on the Dodgers Padres game because it has like the previews in the guide of what you're watching. And I literally remember thinking to myself vividly, like, I wonder what this Vin Scully guy is all about. I'm sure he'll stink. Like thinking like some old guy who's like past his prime. And I, clicked on the game and it was in commercial, and they came back and they showed the moon, like a full moon when they came back. And he didn't say anything at first. And I'm just like kind of watching, like kind of waiting. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, he goes, "Isn't it amazing we put a man up there?" And I was hooked. Like I was absolutely like, I was like, this guy is the greatest. He really is the greatest broadcaster of all time. And so I would they simulcast the Dodgers games, radio and TV, the first 3 innings that he would do, until he retired in 2018, I believe it was, or 2017. And so like I would listen to every game, and you could like search my like Twitter handle and Vin Scully, and there's like all these quotes that I would do that I found were amazing. And I have a document on my computer with like some of them that I really loved, these stories he told. Like I was such a nerd, but he's amazing. And it was really cool to kind of tie that into my grandparents, who are a huge part of why I love baseball. So those 4, probably stand out more than any. Just growing up in the New York area, there's a lot of great broadcasters, but the Mets are a big part of my childhood, and those broadcasters, in particular. And then I've always loved Ian Eagle. I think he's so good at what he does. And I know he doesn't do baseball. I think he did at one time, but I just think that the pinnacle right now of broadcasting for what he does, football, basketball, because he's witty. Like he's got these one-liners that are so good, that relate to pop culture, like the Travis Kelce blank space touchdown catch that obviously relates to Taylor Swift, and the homework that he does, and like the fun that he has. Like he's really relatable, and you could tell he's having a great time. He's a huge influence on me as well.
Zach, I think you had a question.
Yeah, I love the Scully stories. It's awesome. The Mariners play a cool clip when Dave Sims, the Mariners broadcaster, got to interview Vin Scully, and he told like the classic Jackie Robinson story. It's so good. You can just listen to it over and over. But yeah, super cool moment post game for you after calling your first major league game, for Cohen to come in there and tap you on the shoulder. And kind of have that private moment with you. Like that's something you'll remember forever. That's amazing. I definitely want to ask you about like feedback that you got from that game. I mean, like I'm sure you got a lot of positive feedback, maybe a little bit of negative, I don't know, but like I know you just got so much like outpouring like support from friends, family. I saw you tweeted that you had over 100 unread text messages from people just reaching out because you were able to make your major league debut. Like, do you have any kind of like, I don't know, sentimental and I guess kind of funny moments? Like, did somebody say, "Hey Scott, you kind of went a little too slow on that walk-off, dude," or like what was the whole how did it go? How was the feedback you got?
The only negative feedback, fortunately, I'm grateful for people keeping the negative feedback to themselves for now. That's how you get better, right? Was my wife when I said this was the most incredible day ever, and she said, "Your son just threw up in the hotel elevator." But beyond that, I mean, I wouldn't be here without so many people, which, like John, you brought that up earlier. I meant that. Like, my wife when I'm on the road here in Gwinnett, she's with our kids and she's alone with them. That's not easy to do. And I've had offers to leave, because I do PR. Like, there's been offers that have come through that are like, man, this is a really good job, but it's a lot of money, and I wouldn't travel, and you wouldn't be alone with the kids. And like, I would have taken it if she had said, like, I'm ready. And she said no. Like, she said, you're putting so much work into this, you can't leave now. I believe in you. Like, that stuff. My friends, who are a big part of this, like sending me, I had so many texts from them, but like anytime I needed to laugh or, whatever, or just to catch up with them, just to stay sane because you're working such long hours, like that's a huge part of it. Obviously my parents were there, so they didn't text me, but my family is in a big group chat. So to hear from them, because they were the ones who allowed me to dream. They didn't say, yo, you have to do this career or that career. They said, you want to be a broadcaster? Do it. Like, you have to work really hard. It's a difficult job, but there's no reason why you can't be successful with that. So like all those people. And then, like it was fortunately like, it's like, it's overwhelming to hear from that many. Like, my phone to this day is not stopped buzzing really 2 days later. But I think throughout the game, and I didn't get down to like 30 texts. I got down to like 30, and then it was like midnight, and I had to like stop because I was exhausted. But I didn't get back to everybody until, fortunately, a 7-hour bus ride to Gwinnett allows you the time to just sit and reply. But it meant a lot to me that people told me, they took the time out of their day to tell me all these nice things. And so I knew that I wouldn't be here without them, even if it's a really small thing. And I wanted to make sure I got back to everybody. I hope I've done that. That's been my goal. I hope I didn't have anybody slip, but it's been really cool to hear from so many people, obviously people who are really dear to me, but also like former players that I haven't talked to in years who got my number somehow and reach out to me from like my Myrtle Beach days. That is really cool. Their parents, that stuff I didn't expect. And it really made me feel very, very loved, and that's a great feeling.
Scott, we really appreciate you being on the podcast again. He may be our first repeat guest, right, Zach?
He is, yeah. Book it.
That's cool.
We'll have to do it again.
I'm honored.
Let's wrap up with last questions or last thoughts. We'll start with Zane, then go to Ty, then go back to Zach.
The only thing I got is one, congratulations again. Awesome to see you, fulfill your dream and get to the next level. But the only thing I got is, looks like June 11th, the Indianapolis Indians are coming to you guys. Might see Skeens, might not. We'll see. It looks like he'll probably stay up there for a while. However, one of my former players is currently on the Indianapolis Indians, Dylan Shockley. If he's still there, tell him I said what's up.
I will. That sounds awesome. Congratulations.
He's been up and down with the Pittsburgh system, so we'll see.
Good for him, though. That's awesome.
Hi.
Oh, yeah.
Guys, I just want to say how cool. Oh, Ty, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you're good, man. What do you got?
I just want to say how cool it is. You guys do this as a family. That's awesome. That's really cool for you. First off, I didn't know Johnny had 3 sons with 3 different, rooting interests, but the fact that you guys do this and it's a way to keep in touch is really cool. I just think it's awesome.
Well, thank you.
It's pretty funny because Zach's always like, yeah, first place Mariners, but then, July will roll around and they're going to be fighting for a wild card spot barely.
It's always the Red Sox fans that have like the negativity. It's just like the Red Sox mindset.
And then there's me, the Tigers fan. Yeah, me, the Tigers fan, who predicted there would be a first place. Who would have thought, right, Scott? Who would have thought that the AL Central would be the best division in baseball on May 20th?
I thought the Tigers were going to be pretty good too, but the Royals, I did not see that. I did not see Cleveland being this good. Really, even Minnesota, like they went on that crazy streak. But yeah, I want the Tigers. They got a great fan base. I would love to see them be good, but they have some work to do, more than I thought.
All right, Ty, anything for you on that question?
Yeah, I just want to say thanks again, man. And I'm gonna make a prediction here. Since the first time you're on, 3 years later, you made your debut. I'm gonna make a prediction here. Maybe 3.5-ish years, you'll be calling a World Series game.
Whoa.
And
Your
we'll
words to God's ears.
and
That would be
we'll
amazing.
we'll clip this. There's the
That'd be
prediction.
what, October 18th.
Yep, it's out there. Postseason baseball. You're calling it. You're calling it. Postseason baseball. That's a prediction. Said it here first.
I remember, Scott, after we wrapped with you, our first ever guest podcast. My dad and I don't remember if you were on it with us.
I wasn't. Nope.
Like I just remember like talking like after you signed off, Scott, like with my dad, like how much fun that was, like just to like talk baseball with somebody. And I remember my dad's words. He goes, and what if like he just makes the major leagues? Like, what if he becomes like a major league broadcaster? Like, how cool is that? Like, we had him on our show. And like for me, I mean, I don't know, Scott, I just think of you as a friend. I was just like, whoa, like that's true. Like Scott could like actually do, like I never really thought about it before. I think of you like Myrtle Beach Scott. But yeah, man, congratulations. Like you accomplished your goal. I mean, you got many more years of your career ahead of you. How awesome. And yeah, man, looking forward to seeing you here in Charlotte very soon.
Well, thank you guys. What a sweet story. And again, thank you for having me on. I'm never too big time. This has been, the attention is weird. So I'm grateful that people want to talk to me, and always grateful. And when you reached out about having me on, again, no doubt, I just need to know the bus schedule. And for that, I apologize. It took so long.
Well, thanks again, Scott. It was great to talk to you again, to reconnect. Wish you nothing but success from here on out. And also, I love the fact that you mentioned your family on more than one occasion. I think that anyone that's out there that's just grinding, trying to do their thing, puts family first. Obviously, you do. And without family, it doesn't mean nothing. Accomplishing anything doesn't mean anything, right? It just doesn't make it worth it without having your family that you love so close by. So congratulations to you. All right, Ty, where can people get more information if they want to hear more interviews? Maybe go back and listen to that first interview with Scott, right? Where can they get the more information?
Yep, you can check us out here on YouTube, of course, at Big League Dreaming the Podcast. Wherever you're listening to your podcast at, Big League Dreaming the Podcast, Spotify, Apple Podcast, and we're on Twitter at BLD Pod. That's at BLDPOD. And we're also on TikTok at Big League Dreaming. Definitely go check out the other episodes.